On the eve of my marriage to William, his archenemy died in a car accident. It was then that I realized the hidden and intense love William had for her. At the scene of the accident, he wept bitterly while holding her in his arms. To make up for the regret, he postponed our wedding and embarked on a global tour with her ashes. After coming to terms with the situation, he returned determined to marry me. It was only then that he discovered that the unattended body at the accident scene was me. When I returned from a business trip, I was involved in a car accident outside William's office. The midday sun shone on me, pale and cold. I hovered in the middle of the road, watching William kneel on the ground, crying uncontrollably. He held the face of the person in his arms, full of despair and devastation. I looked at Linda, bewildered. She was clean, gently wiped by William, cradled in his arms as if she were just sleeping peacefully. Meanwhile, I lay not far away, looking disheveled like a rag doll. As my white dress fluttered in the wind, revealing me in an undignified manner to the onlookers, my fiancé, throughout it all, never once noticed me beside him. Even though I wore the white dress he had given me and the engagement ring on my ring finger glinted brightly, he couldn't spare a glance for me. In his eyes, there was only Linda, with no room for anyone else. As the medical staff reluctantly wrapped me in a white cloth and lifted me onto a stretcher, passing by William, he suddenly looked up. I hesitated. Had he recognized me? But in the next moment, he scooped up Linda and rushed past my stretcher, kneeling in front of the medical staff. "Doctor, please save her." In the public eye, William was seen as aloof and rarely showed emotions. Even in front of me, he always maintained a composed demeanor. Even when his emotions ran deep, he would only hoarsely whisper praises in my ear. But now, for Linda, the person who had snatched numerous clients from him, he was shamelessly kneeling in front of everyone, weeping bitterly. As I scrutinized William's face, his features, finely sculpted as if by an artist, betrayed a total breakdown of his usual restrained expression. Twisted and intense emotions filled his eyes, like a rabid, out-of-control dog. Now I understood that he wasn't incapable of expressing emotions. It was just that his disdain, his anger, his love, they were all directed at Linda. The love that had once permeated my very being was swiftly stripped away in an instant. Feeling a bit nauseous, I took a few steps back, not wanting to see his face anymore. Suddenly, a shattered cell phone screen caught my eye. It was a white phone with the cute teddy bear charm Linda's. The screen was frozen on a chat interface with William. The last two messages were from William: "I am getting married." And Linda's response, "Wait for me." It hit me suddenly how I had died. I hadn't told William about returning from my business trip early. As soon as I landed, I went straight to his office, intending to surprise him. The memory of him leaning against the doorframe before my departure, gently saying he couldn't bear to part with me and that we would get married when I returned, spurred me to quicken my pace. But downstairs, I encountered Linda. Holding her phone, her tone gentle but with a barely perceptible scorn in her eyes, she said, "Take a good look, Emily. As long as I don't agree, your marriage won't happen. He may hate me, but he loves me more. I am the one he fights against and loved." With that, she sized up my disheveled appearance and smirked. "Hope you have some self-awareness," and voluntarily stepped back. "I don't want to take action against you." I raised my hand and slapped her. After that, my memory becomes hazy, remembering only scattered scenes to the out-of-control van, screaming pedestrians, and William stumbling towards Linda's figure. For some reason, my soul couldn't stray too far from William. I followed him to the hospital, only to be driven away by Linda's family. Returning home, William locked himself indoors. He turned off his phone and wallowed in drunkenness on the couch. He had once remarked that alcohol was harmful to the brain, and at our engagement banquet, he hadn't touched a drop. But now, he drank day and night, seemingly intent on drinking himself to death to join Linda. It wasn't until the fourth day that Louis burst in with his assistant, forcibly punching William. "William, I know you're in pain, but you must pull yourself together today. Aren't you going to her funeral?" William turned his head after being struck, disheveled hair falling over his forehead, looking utterly haggard. He chuckled softly and spoke faintly. "Louis, I regret it. I should have realized my feelings earlier. When Linda was alive, I was always against her. She didn't even know I loved her." Louis faltered. "Linda? Not Emily?" At the mention of my name, William had a momentary pause. He closed his eyes, pressed his forehead, and in a gruff voice, asked, "Was she the one who sent you?" But Linda was already dead. What was she quarreling with a dead person for? It's not like he wasn't going to marry her, the wedding date was simply postponed. Tell her not to make a scene. I stared at William, who was devoid of any guilt. The assistant, upon hearing this, started to say something, but Lewis interrupted him with a raised hand. He looked at William, coldly smiling. All right, since you've made up your mind, then wait for her to return from her business trip, and she and I will have a chat. I hope you don't regret it. With that, he turned and left with his hesitant assistant. I followed them to the stairs and overheard the assistant cautiously asking, "Shouldn't we tell William about Emily's situation?" Lewis hesitated, his voice hoarse and weary. "I'll handle Emily's matter." "Don't tell William yet, he can't handle it. And most importantly, I don't think Emily would want to see him." Leaning against the doorframe, I watched Lewis, his eyes red with tears, and let out a bitter smile. The three of us had grown up together in an orphanage and later attended the same university. After graduation, we co-founded the current company. Back then, William and I lived in a humble basement together. When he returned from his engagements and saw me eating instant noodles, he would embrace me with pity, promising to never disappoint me and to provide me with a happy home. His greatest wish back then was to marry me in grandeur. But now, he lived in a penthouse in the city center, and his biggest worry was how to shake me off. 3 days later, I still hadn't found a way to leave William. But he, in an unusual fashion, cleaned himself up immaculately. Bewildered, I followed him until he knelt in front of Linda's mansion. It was then that I understood his intentions. He wanted Linda's ashes. Though mentally prepared, my heart ached instinctively. A week passed, and he showed no concern for my absence or whether I was in danger, but he would kneel in front of the enemy's mansion, begging for her ashes. Linda's family was all about profit. They didn't care about the insignificant death of one daughter, they only wanted to wring out her last bit of value. They wanted to trade Linda's ashes for the most important project in my hands. The project was one I had worked tirelessly on for months, accompanying clients to the brink of exhaustion, finally securing it after 3 days in the hospital. At that time, William had uncommonly scolded me, accusing me of not taking care of myself. And now, without hesitation, he agreed to the trade. Amidst the heartache, I felt a pang of regret. The efforts I had put in for our future had ultimately become a stepping stone for him to pursue Linda. The urn was handed over by Linda's half-brother Peter. William accepted it cautiously. As the ambient lights flickered, he looked down, his dark lashes casting faint shadows on his fair face. A tear slid from his reddened eyes. "Thank you," his raspy voice dissipated with the wind. The last bit of love in my heart shattered. After receiving the ashes, William rushed unrelentingly to the airport. On the way, he received a call from Lewis. The voice on the other end sounded distorted and agitated. "Your assistant said you booked a world tour cruise ticket and are leaving today." "William, have you lost your mind?" William silently held the receiver further away. Clutching the urn tightly, the clear black hues in his eyes exuded a delicate tenderness. Yes, with Emily. We missed out on so many years, and I don't want to have any more regrets. I want to love her purely and completely for a year. A smile played on his lips. As for Emily, the wedding date was postponed. Lewis fell silent for a while, finally unable to bear it, and roared, "How dare you mention Emily? She's already dead. She died right in front of you." William lowered his eyes, sighed softly. "Lewis, why are you still indulging in this nonsense? We haven't even been out these days, how could she have died in front of me? Stop making these tasteless jokes in the future." Lewis became extremely angry and laughed. "I'm not joking, believe it or not." "Fine, Lewis, no matter what you say, I won't come back. The company is in good hands with you and Emily, I trust you." His tone was calm yet firm. "A person only lives once, let me indulge this once." With that, he hung up the phone, decisively took out the SIM card, and forcefully snapped it in half. I gazed down at the darkened screen, unconsciously visualizing Lewis's furious face. His temperament has always been impatient. In our senior year of high school, I topped the year-end exam. The day after the results were announced, as soon as I entered the classroom, I found my desk filled with garbage. Before I could react, Lewis, in a fit of anger, threw his bag, grabbed the collar of the culprit, and dragged him out of the classroom. William silently handed me a cup of hot water, carefully cleaned my desk, and then went to find the teacher to check the surveillance footage. I didn't do anything, just sat there, once, twice, and again topped the grade. Looking back now, from childhood to adulthood, we have always maintained this division of roles. Lewis charging at the forefront, William providing strategy, and me guarding from the rear. The three of us are indispensable. And now, Lewis has lost two companions at the same time. I am very worried about him. William, on the other hand, does not share this concern. After getting off the plane, he even took the time to get a beautiful urn for Linda. It was elaborately carved and adorned with jewels. The vibrant and flamboyant appearance resembled Linda. I remembered the scene when I first met Linda. We three went to a bar to celebrate Louis's birthday. In the noisy and crowded dance floor, Linda, in a red dress, stunningly beautiful, stood out. She staggered into William's arms, looked up at him. Perhaps the atmosphere was too provocative. She provocatively glanced at me, then turned William's head and kissed him. William was stunned, his pupils contracted suddenly. He pushed her away forcefully, took a few steps back. Where did this crazy woman come from? He frowned, looking at Linda, who had fallen on the broken glass, then turned and held my hand. He spoke with disgust in his tone and a cold expression. But I noticed a hint of crimson slowly creeping up his neck. That night, Linda's hand was cut and left a scar. Later, every time she attended a banquet, she would wear gloves. William probably regretted it. So now, as he clenched the carving knife, disregarding the scars on his fingers, he carefully inscribed her name on the urn. Beloved Linda. In just 4 words, mixed with blood and tears, accumulated with belated guilt and love. I stood on the balcony of the cruise ship, feeling the sea breeze. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting intermittent shadows on William's face. He lowered his head, gently wiping away the bloodstains on the urn. As if on the day I arrived at the orphanage, he wiped away my tears and runny nose with his small hands. Then awkwardly comforted me, Emily, don't be afraid, Big Brother will protect you forever. In fact, traveling around the world with William. Apart from being nauseous, the experience was quite good. I have never been to such beautiful places before. He would plan ahead for a few days, then bring Linda's ashes and take serious photos of the scenery along the way, sometimes even explaining the history of the places they visited to her. When curious passersby asked, he would proudly admit, "This is my wife." And our engagement rings, he casually gave them to a street artist in exchange for a painting of him and Linda embracing in a bar on his first stop of the journey. The trip went smoothly, but William would occasionally gaze into the distance, lost in thought. We had a difficult life in the past, with no time or money to go out and play. So we would just lie in our rented room, fantasizing about where we would go in the future. But as we became busier with more money, we had less and less time for leisure. He said, when we get married, we will go to Iceland for the northern lights on our honeymoon. And when we get older, we'll go to a peaceful place to retire. But I didn't wait for marriage, nor did I wait to grow old. The fact is, nothing lasts forever. Anyone can part ways at any time. One day, several months later, William passed by a bridal shop. Perhaps the wedding dresses in the window caught his eye. As he stopped involuntarily, I walked over to take a look. The wedding dress was beautiful. The cascading skirt flowed down, as if falling from the Milky Way in the mortal world, exuding a hazy ethereal aura. It was very similar to the one William and I tried on together. William stood quietly in front of the window, with a glint of anticipation and nostalgia in his eyes. That night, he held his phone, looking at our old photos all night at the hotel window. From high school, to college, and now. In almost every picture, I was looking attentively at the camera. And he was looking attentively at me. Old photos flashed on the screen, and finally, William's fingers stopped at my high school graduation photo. His gaze crossed time, meeting 18-year-old me. The next moment, as if scalded, he suddenly put down his phone, nervously rubbing his ring finger. But there was nothing on it. He had long exchanged the engagement ring for a painting. Standing beside William, I looked at him coldly. What is he afraid of? Is he afraid of facing the me who used to look at him with adoration at 18? Or does he remember how much he loved me once, fearing he made the wrong choice, but it doesn't matter now? I didn't do anything wrong. I should reflect on my judgment and choices, not on my sincerity and love. Early the next morning, William, for the first time, left without bringing Linda's ashes. He rushed to the store and ordered a new pair of diamond rings. The rings were named New Beginning. The shop assistant smiled and asked, "Honeymoon with your wife?" William's lips curled up, his eyes filled with relief and hope. No, it's a fresh start. That night, he buried Linda's ashes on a quiet island, spending the whole night talking to her. I have to go, Emily is waiting for me. I have let her down once, and I cannot afford to make another mistake. But I don't regret loving you. In this life, we are destined to be apart, but in the next life, let's be together properly. After burying Linda, William hastily booked a ticket back to his home country. When he got off the plane, he went straight to the company. Along the way, he appeared calm, but his face betrayed an unmistakable nervousness and anticipation. However, this anticipation faded away when he couldn't find me after searching every corner of the office. He impatiently pushed open Lewis's office door. I peeked in and looked at Lewis. After not seeing each other for a year, he had slimmed down, but his demeanor was much more composed. Seeing William bursting in so recklessly, he just gave him a disdainful glance. "Where's Emily? Is she avoiding me?" William's voice was quiet, tinged with weariness. Lewis stared at him intently. After a while, he scoffed. "Didn't I tell you already? She's dead, died in the same car accident as Linda." William was stunned. The diamond ring box slipped from his hand. The afternoon sun was bright, reflecting from the falling diamonds, stinging the eyes. As if suddenly realizing something, he raised his head abruptly, his face turning as pale as paper. "What did you say?" He gritted his teeth, his voice sounding as if forced out from his throat. Lewis, losing patience, bent down to retrieve several papers from the safe and viciously threw them at William. "She died together with Linda in front of you. Before she died, she was struggling to crawl towards you, trying to seek help from you. Didn't you see it?" The sharp edges of the papers cut William's skin, and he turned his head. A few traces of blood appeared on his fair face. His tall figure trembled for a moment, gazing blankly at the falling papers. "That is my death certificate." "No, it can't be, this is not her." William collapsed on the ground, clutching at his chest, gasping desperately. I bent down to take a look. It's quite bizarre to be able to see your own death certificate with your own eyes. In just a few lines, it encapsulated my 27 years of life. Lewis's eyes were fierce, his voice suppressed with anger. "The day she returned from a business trip and came to the company to find you, she coincidentally ran into Linda downstairs. A car lost control and crashed into them both. My sister, who we relied on for 20 years, died right in front of you. What were you doing at that time? You were holding your dead lover, crying and pleading with doctors to save her. I handled her affairs alone, and I was worried you wouldn't be able to handle it, so I didn't dare tell you. During those days, I couldn't eat or sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see Emily crying out to me in pain. But what did you do? You disappeared with your dead lover's ashes. William, why couldn't it have been you who died then?" I watched Lewis, his eyes red with emotion, feeling a sharp pang in my heart. At this moment, the one I couldn't let go of the most was him. Abandoned by his parents since childhood, he finally had a family to rely on, but now, he was left all alone. William's dark pupils trembled slightly. In the next moment, he started coughing violently, blood streaming from the corner of his lips, staining his white shirt. With a dazed expression, he reached out to touch the blood-stained proof of death. For 20 years, he had written my name countless times. And now, he seemed to be unfamiliar with those 3 words, stubbornly and unbelievably rubbing them repeatedly. The blood smudged, blossoming into a bright red rose on the paper. I watched William holding the death certificate, feeling a mix of bitterness and regret in my heart. I didn't feel sorry for him. I only pitied the me who had once tried so hard to live. A gust of wind squeezed through the narrow gap in the window, emitting a hoarse, muffled wail. Lewis, impatient, stepped forward, grabbing his collar and glaring at him through gritted teeth. "Who do you think you're disgusting with that appearance? Don't be pathetic in front of me." William gently pushed away his hand, rolled up his sleeves to wipe off the bloodstains from the corner of his lips, and calmly looked at Lewis. "Where are Emily's ashes?" His voice hoarse, his pitch-black eyes tinged with a sickly madness. "She's still waiting for me to get married. I owe her a wedding. Let me see her." Lewis stepped back 2 paces. "Don't dream. William." Despair filled William's eyes as he closed them. After a long pause, he choked out, "Lewis, I am also her family. Please, let me see her one last time." Lewis coldly chuckled. "Are you worthy? The last image Emily saw of you was holding another woman, wailing in agony. She didn't even have time to hate you. How could she possibly want to see you?" William's face turned ashen. "I really don't want to see him. But I don't really hate him much. We relied on each other for so many years. There was no love, but there was some affection. I just regret it. Regret all those days filled with joy, wanting to be with him. Lewis turned and opened the door, calling in an assistant. "Don't let him in again." The assistant hesitated but still tried to help William up. William, however, was like a lifeless puppet, unwilling to move. He stood up helplessly, speaking in his usual respectful tone, but his words held no kindness. "William, there's something you should know. Emily was supposed to be on a business trip for half a month before coming back. But in order to be back in time for your birthday, she worked overtime to compress the schedule into a week, just to surprise you." As he spoke, he hurried back to his desk and took out a thick stack of envelopes that I remembered. Every time before going on a trip, I would leave him a letter. It wasn't really a farewell. Just a comfort. Because William's parents died in an accident when he was 4 years old, leaving no words behind, this had left a deep psychological scar on him. When we were in the orphanage, he always feared that the people around him would suddenly disappear in the next moment. Once, when I went on a trip with the orphanage director, he tearfully held me and cried all night, worried that I wouldn't come back, afraid that I wouldn't want him anymore. He kept me awake all night with his crying, so I learned to comfort him the way my grandmother used to comfort me, soothing him in a soft voice, "Don't cry, I won't leave you." It became a habit. For the next 20 years, every time he woke up from a nightmare, I would hold him in my arms, gently rubbing his head, and assuring him that I was still here. William's hand trembled as he eagerly tore open the envelopes. I leaned in to see. I can't quite remember what was written in detail. But I do recall that the first line in each letter was, "I won't forsake you." Hot tears fell drop by drop, blurring the words on the paper. William bowed his head, reading each word carefully. The rest was more like everyday reminders. Sometimes it was to remind him to take his medicine on time, sometimes it was to tell him not to forget to throw away the vegetables in the fridge, and sometimes it was a wish for a centaur at my funeral. The last letter was written before my last business trip. Back then, we had just decided that we would get married when I returned. I never thought something like this would happen. So, it wasn't a farewell I left. It was a yearning for the wedding. I wanted Lewis to wear a wedding dress and scare William when he turned around. I wanted to swap the flower bouquet for a cat toy, and whoever caught it could have a little orange cat after the wedding. I wanted to force William to wear a frog suit and dance with me. I had quite a few wishes. But they couldn't be fulfilled. Everything had been smooth and safe on the way back. Who could have imagined that something would happen right outside the company building? William pressed the letters close to his chest, crying out in agony, like a dying beast. "Emily, Emily." He sobbed, nearly losing his voice. "Emily, come back. I was wrong. I was truly wrong." As if only now did he truly realize what he had lost. I knelt in front of him, earnestly admiring his anguished face, just like before, gently patting his head. My hand passed through his hair, leaving no trace behind. I sadly withdrew my hand. Even though he couldn't hear me, I still wanted to say it. "William, this time, I won't take you." William passed out from crying and was taken to the hospital by Lewis. Upon waking up, he seemed much calmer. He stared quietly at the ceiling, lost in his thoughts. After a while, he glanced at Lewis standing beside him, then rolled off the bed. Lewis didn't move, only staring coldly at him. It wasn't until William began climbing onto the windowsill that Lewis hurriedly stopped him. "What are you doing?" Lewis grabbed William's arm and forcefully threw him back on the ground. William struggled to stand up, silent, and attempted to climb back onto the windowsill. Lewis couldn't bear it and raised his hand to punch him. "What are you doing? Going crazy?" William wiped away the blood from his nose and spoke nonchalantly, "I'm going to be with Emily. She's scared to be alone. You have to manage the company, can't go with her, so I'll go." I was shocked and took a few steps back. "Don't come to be with me, I'll find it annoying." Lewis sneered, his tone ice cold. "Be with her? Are you even worthy? You should live well and spend the rest of your life in pain and despair to atone." "I don't think so. How could someone like him, who is fickle-minded, sincerely repent for a lifetime for my sake?" Even Linda, whom he loved to the point of heartbreak, was carelessly buried by him. Lewis waved at the door and called in a few strong caregivers. "Watch him, don't let him die." With that, he turned and left. Before leaving, he glanced at William and threatened fiercely, "If you die, I'll pour your ashes into a stinking gutter, so you'll never see Emily." William had no reaction. I started to panic. If he was trapped here, didn't that mean I was also trapped here? Lewis, how could you betray your teammate like this? Caregivers couldn't stop someone determined to die. William had secretly saved up sleeping pills for half a month. Then, one evening, he swallowed them all without the caregivers noticing. I wasn't too concerned about whether he lived or died. Because all this time, I had never seen another soul. As William gradually fell into a deep sleep, my mind also began to drift. Time raced like a runaway horse in my ears. The setting sun slowly climbed up the pile of test papers and textbooks on the desk. I stared at the dusty chalkboard, surrounded by the chattering noise of classmates. Emily. The clear voice of a young man sounded charming amidst the noisy chatter. I turned to look. 18-year-old William, with slightly curly hair, emitted a golden light as it swayed with his breathing and the breeze. Emily, it's really you. His eyes red, he carefully took my hand, pressing it against his cheek and gently rubbing it. Are you here to pick me up? I heard that after people die, their loved ones come to take them away. Is it true? Suddenly, everything fell silent. Time seemed to freeze at that moment, with only his rapid breaths and some unknown device beeping. I indifferently tried to pull my hand back, but he held onto it tighter. It's not me. William paused. Why not? I lightly repeated. Why not? Is it my unconditional love that made you forget to look in the mirror? What gives you the audacity to think that after you die, I would overlook past grievances to come and get you? William was taken aback. No, Emily, I didn't know that the one next to you was you. His tears fell on my hand like raindrops, crying like a lost puppy. With my school uniform sleeves, I wiped them away, asking him if he knew if it still meant anything. Clutching my hand, he whispered with quivering dark lashes. Emily, I'm sorry, it's my fault, I love you, I just want to be with you, He trailed off. You just what? I turned my head to look at him quietly. You're just fickle, you're just tired, you think life is too mundane and want to seek different excitements. You feel that I'm not only your lover, but also your family, that I will always tolerate you, always waiting for you, I said to him. I sighed and slowly untangled his fingers one by one. William, deep down you are just a selfish person. I shouldn't have had hope in you, I continued. William closed his eyes, unable to look at me. Emily, I'm sorry, he said. Maybe he didn't remember, but he was the one who confessed his feelings first. He said he would never leave me no matter what. The person who once said he would love me forever ended up apologizing, I replied. Emily, you can hit me, curse me, hate me, but you can't let me go, William pleaded, looking guilty and desperate. I chuckled lightly. William, do you know what? Actually, even after I died, my soul has always been by your side, I said. He suddenly looked up, as if realizing something, and his face instantly turned ugly. I watched you cry your heart out for Linda, saw you give away my project, watched you travel around the world with her. Saw you go to places I had always wanted to go. It's sickening. During that time, I never stopped wanting to leave you, I said. He tried to persuade me to stay, but I impatiently pushed his hand away. All right, that's it. William, we were doomed from the start, let me go. I said as I stood up and walked towards the bright light. This time, William didn't follow. Balanced karma will eventually bring reconciliation, and everything will go as planned. Just now, I probably figured out why I was stuck by William's side. It was because of our engagement. I toyed with the hot, tightly bound diamond ring on my finger. Why should I thought. He lost his ring, but it's me who is trapped. The diamond on my hand sparkled with faint light. William proposing to me, his face filled with excitement and determination, his vows still echoing in my ears, as if it was just yesterday. I lowered my eyes and decisively took off the ring. The ring dissolved into silver light little by little. I felt a long-lost sense of relief. My body felt light, as if it could take off at any moment. At the end of the bright light, I saw Linda. She leaned against the wall, looking at me with a complex expression. Why did he choose you in the end? She asked. I glanced at her, politely replied, it's none of your business, and continued walking forward. I ignored her further questioning. Aren't you regretting leaving him like this? I didn't answer her. Regret? I was brave, honest, capable of loving and hating. I hadn't done anything wrong. The one who should regret is not me. I can't remember which Friday night it was. I had dinner with Emily and William as usual, then left. Many years later, I realized that it was just an ordinary farewell that night, and I would never see them again in this life. William didn't make it. He took too many sleeping pills and had no desire to survive. All my family is gone. In the end, I couldn't bear to scatter his ashes into the sewer. After all, we grew up together as brothers. So, I found a place where he and Linda were buried together. I buried them side by side. Emily's epitaph was engraved according to what she had mentioned before. Broken earth, half star, poor review. Every few weeks, I would go visit her. Tidy up her grave, pour her some tea. Sometimes, when work got too busy, I couldn't make tea in time. I'd just pour some oriental tea leaves there. After all, she wouldn't be able to taste it. Recently, the gap under her tombstone was filled with 4-leaf clovers. As I approached, they would sway and nod. It was as if Emily, sitting on the swing in the orphanage, waving and calling me her brother from a distance. 5 years after getting married, my daughter was born. She was tiny, even smaller than Emily when she first came to the orphanage. When I received her from the nurse, I was stunned. Tears flowed uncontrollably. On her shoulder, there was a birthmark in the shape of a 4-leaf clover, gently waving at me with her breath. Actually, the first time I saw William was not in a bar. It was at a company presentation. The three of them sat together, like an inseparable triangle. William was attentively looking at Emily, not sparing a single extra glance for anyone else. She raised her hand, he handed over water, she shrank her neck, he gave her a coat. I was envious. Meanwhile, my half-brother came up to me disgustingly, getting into the company doesn't mean anything. Dad won't entrust important projects to a girl. The family's fortune is all mine, don't have any fantasies. I was even more envious of Emily. What does it feel like to be loved by someone who is attentive and caring? That day in the bar, I boldly approached him. Although he pushed me away, both he and I knew he took the bait. Emily's heartbroken expression was so beautiful to witness. After that, every time he saw me, he would glare at me. Seeing that cold and collected face expressing such a rich array of emotions because of me, I felt a sense of accomplishment. In the business world, we ruthlessly fought against each other. In our personal lives, we would exchange insults upon meeting. If things got heated, I would grab his hair and bite his lips. He wouldn't back down either. I thought I was the special one in his heart. Later, I found out I was completely wrong. That despicable Lewis buried William alongside me. I heard that a soul without attachment can reincarnate. In very rare cases, a soul without attachment might linger in this world due to certain ties. During that time, neither humans nor souls could see her. Emily must be in such a situation. Unable to reincarnate, I realize that I have attachments. My family doesn't love me, they see me as a resource to exchange for projects. The person I love doesn't love me back, he sees me as a plaything for seeking excitement. I wanted someone to love me, but that's impossible. William can't reincarnate either. He's even more ridiculous. He hopes that Emily can forgive him, which is even more impossible. So, we remain like this, mutually detesting each other, never to be reborn.